that that they have a business right now that they are having trouble financially. And they asked me a question because they know I own a few businesses. They asked me, said, well, are your business having problem financially, or are you having problems with money with your business? And as we talked a little, and I began to tell them that I didn't get into business for money per se. Now that's going to mess with a lot of people, because you got several people that says, well, what's the purpose to get in business? Get in business and make more money, right? In actuality, I'm gonna just tell you a quick little story. When I was called into business, the purpose of how all of that kind of came together, if you got a few minutes. Well, I started off working at a plant, and working at this plant, you know, let's go back a little bit further. Before I started at the plant, when I was a younger man, I used to write out different things about business, and I didn't really even know why I used to do it, but it was always in me. For some reason, I always wanted to run several businesses as a child. It was something that I had a few things that I wanted to do. I wanted to be a police officer. I wanted to be a business owner. I never wanted to be a preacher, but I wanted to be those two. And I would write stories out, even in school, telling people how I wanted to. I had to stand up in front of the class and tell people how I'm going to do certain businesses and how I'm going to be a police officer and save all these people and right? And as time went on, life happens, right? Life happened to everyone. I gotten older, and as I got older, the police dream never just came to fruition. But the business thing was still there, and it was alive in my heart, and I couldn't shake it. No matter what I did, I could work jobs, I can go help out other people, and it was always there. It just would never leave. And sometimes you need to understand that when God gives you a purpose, that purpose won't leave you. It's going to go with you, no matter what city I was in, no matter what relationship I was in, no matter what I was around, who were my friends, who walked off as my friends. It didn't matter what I was doing. That thing would never leave. Whether I was with God or without God, it didn't matter. Whether I backslid or it was always there. So I realized it was a gift. Later on in life, I realized it was a gift. So as I went into working, a regular job at the plant, and I began to work other odd jobs. And before you know it, I was working at the dealership. I've always been around cars, so I worked at the dealership, and I just kind of grew in the dealership, rose to a level at the dealership. And one day God came to me, and he began to talk to me about the dreams that he had put in my heart for his business, entrepreneurship. And I always kind of fiddle with it and play with it a little bit and whatever not. And I'm gonna use this to answer your question, okay? Answer that question. And this thing was always there in my spirit. And again, it would always be there, but sometimes I would try to slide it back or push it down, because I understood that business has its ups and downs. I knew that working in a business, that sometimes you make money, sometimes you don't make money, sometimes it does well, sometimes you don't do it. I didn't like the up and down effect. I wanted a steady paycheck. So, wanting a steady paycheck, it kind of caused me to not really necessarily wanted to go into business, because I knew that going into business was going to I want to get a steady paycheck. So when God approached me again later on in life with this, what he put in me from a child, I said, me and him had this conversation, and I was telling God, I want to do it, and my heart want to do it, and I have a desire to do it, but I can't deal with the up and down. I mean, I'm gonna have to take care of. I got responsibilities, I got different things, and I can't deal with the up and down that comes along with finances. And I also knew that the sacrifice that it takes to be in business. I wasn't in a position, at least I felt I wasn't, in position to make that sort of sacrifice. So why don't you let me just work, and I'll just work, and then later on in life, I might just eventually get over into my business, right? Sound like some of you, right? So God said to me, he said, well, if you don't do it now, it's only going to be harder later on, because a gift is not given to you just to have. A gift is given to you to use. And I said, oh, okay, well, wow, that make a lot of sense. But God, you still have not addressed the up and down, the financial standpoint of it. I don't want to, I can't afford that. And God said, Bishop, you don't get into business, and this is powerful for somebody. You don't get into business for money. And that blew my mind, because I said, whoa, wait a minute. That, based on what I know, that goes all against every logical book I read, everything I ever learned, all of the things, all of the videos and stuff, all of the things that I have studied. God, this goes against that. What do you mean? What do you mean you don't get into it for business? He said, you don't get into business, you get into business for freedom. And when he said that, that blew my mind, because I was thinking to myself, interesting, freedom. I didn't think about that, and I didn't understand what he meant at the time. So of course, being who I am, I began to look it up. I said, well, okay, God, what do you mean by freedom? I understand some things about freedom, right? But I did not understand what he meant by freedom in this sense, right? And let me give you just a little bit on freedom that changed my life, that's going to help you. Freedom is the ability to live, choose, and act without being controlled, bound, or coerced, externally or internally. And when I gotten that, I remember looking up the meaning of that little years ago, and I was like, whoa. The ability to live, that one stuck out more than any of them. The ability to live. So I got back to my friend, and I said to my friend that was talking to me about business, I said, are you enjoying the freedoms? Has the business gotten to a place where it would not afford you the freedoms no more that you was affording before? He said, no, I still got the freedoms that I had before. And I said, well, that means your business is successful. A business is only successful when it can give you the freedom or the ability to choose and act without being controlled, bound, or coerced, externally or internally. In other words, it's designed to allow me to do what else needs to be done. So going back to the conversation with me and God, God said, the freedom, Bishop, that I'm giving you is for you to do all of the other things that I need you to do. And you couldn't do that with having a 9 to 5. And in my case back then, it wasn't a 9 to 5, it was more like a 7 to 7. And he said, there's no way you will be able to do all that I put inside of you to do, working those type of hours. In other words, you will be bound by this position and not be free to do the other things that I created you to do. And that blew my mind. And from that moment on, I began to build businesses to give me the freedom that I need to live. And I began to do what I needed to do so I can act without being controlled, bound, or coerced anymore. I didn't want that lifestyle anymore. Now I'm not against you that doing 9 to 5s, because 9 to 5 is a starting point, but it's definitely not the end. So all of you that are working now 9 to 5s, I'm not telling you that's a bad thing. I am telling you, don't look at that as the end. I saw it as a stepping stone. And I had a stone, don't know what I did with it, but I saw it as a stepping stone. Later, as God began to show me what he really called me to do, I understood that a 9 to 5 was just a stepping stone for me. Now, for some people, you're designed to grow in that company, become a manager, become whatever. That's for some. That's just wasn't for me. For me, I was designed to use that 9 to 5 or 7 to 7 as a stepping stone to launch me into the ministries or in the businesses also that God has given me, so I can have the freedom to do what I need to do. I need freedom to do what I do. Can you imagine me, everything that I got to do, and I'm still working a 7 to 7? I would not be able to do anything else but what I'm doing. Now, sometimes, sometimes I'm guilty of working myself like crazy, and I'm coming out of that slowly because God is allowing me to recognize my freedom and showing me that I don't have to work as hard. All I got to do is enjoy what He's given me and to walk in that freedom. So my message for you this today is simple. You kingdom influencers, keep this in mind. God has called you to freedom, not necessarily riches. Now, before you turn this off and before you throw something at the screen, I recognize when I'm free to live, the money is always there. So it's not about chasing the dollar, it's about chasing your freedom and obeying God. Until the next time, God bless you.